Hello. I'm going to call this meeting to order. Chair Goss is not here at the moment. You guys will have to pick a temporary chair.
With respect, I suggest Commissioner McCoy take over, given he has the most experience in this.
You know what, I haven't done this in years. That's why you should do it. Stumble over my tongue.
And I've never done it. So.
Okay, it's always the first time.
That's true. There, thank you. Can't hide from.
What do we do? I haven't done this in I know we can do that. Okay, it is, that's like, call to order, please.
Okay, thank you. Chair Goss, Vice Chair Swap is excused. Commissioner McCoy. Commissioner Sarkeesian is excused. Commissioner Sixta. Commissioner Sprinkle.
Here.
Commissioner Waters.
Here.
We do have a quorum.
Pledge of allegiance, please. Pledge allegiance to the flag.
And Chair, could we just state what this meeting is and the date and time? Thank you.
I'd like to figure out what it is.
We'll just
Call to order the commission work session, September 24th, 2025. And item 1 is regular members, planning zone 11, 20. Make a motion. Second. Motion made and seconded. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
I don't want to oppose, but sorry, Chair McCoy, did we receive the minutes?
Yeah.
The prayer? Sorry, I just sat down. I have to confess, I haven't run through them. Actually. My email. I haven't run through them yet. Abstain because I haven't read them.
Minutes are approved. I apologize. Item B, 2025 zoning and subdivision ordinance update, presentation and public comment. Comprehensive update to the city zoning ordinance. Feel and place the city subdivision ordinance.
Good evening, Commissioners. Tonight before you is actually just an overall comprehensive update to the city's proposed amended zoning code, as well as our subdivision ordinance. I'll also be providing a couple updates on a couple policies that are being proposed as well to help with our development process, along with spurring on economic development. This is really night 2 of a 3 series of workshops or special meetings. We did hold a meeting yesterday with the development community, as well as the community in general that was invited. We had quite a few stakeholders that had interest. Some of those are back here this evening. They have a glutton for punishment and they want to hear this presentation again. So we do appreciate them coming out. I'm going to start off with just giving you a really brief overview. The purpose of the zoning ordinance update really is to modernize and organize the code for improved clarity and usability. What I have seen in my year here working with staff, working with the development community, the organization of the code does make it very difficult to read, makes it difficult for our staff to implement it, makes it difficult for homeowners to be able to understand it as well. In addition to that, is to truly align some of the evolving land uses as well as the expectations and state legislation that's come forth. And ultimately, it is here to support businesses, residential, civic development through a clearer, more flexible standards. The code is broken up into 6 different titles, with Title I really being our general provisions. Title II goes into codifications of some of our rebranded development process, as well as an update to our temporary use permits. And again, these are some of the high level, the documents that were sent out to you in your emails are red line documents. It gives you much greater detail for what's being proposed. Title III is our zoning district and land use. This is probably where you'll see one of the larger changes to the code. More specifically, we have a very condensed current land use matrix that our staff implements today. We've actually expanded that matrix, and you'll get to preview that this evening. In addition to that, we are looking at the transect zones, which mostly comprises of just this downtown area. When you think about transect zones, you probably don't think downtown district or downtown identity, and so we're actually changing the name of that designation to downtown district to actually align and provide identity for the downtown area. Ultimately, it's to create a more recognizable zoning identity for the downtown. It still does continue to implement what the transect zones were intended for, which encourages context-sensitive uses that support walkability, mixed use, and local character. And again, the comprehensive land use matrix update goes into clear delineation of permitted, conditionally permitted uses by the zones. And again, it really is designed to be more readable to the developers, business owners, economic development, and for staff. Title IV gets into our supplemental standards. So some of the key things that we took over this last year, direction, whether it be from working with the development community, working with the council, some of those things we're bringing back as part of the comprehensive updates, metal buildings being one, accessory structures, driveway standards. And then we went into more of a use-specific standards, and I have micro schools called out. It's an emerging use. Micro schools and daycares, they are much needed uses in the city. However, they come with their own problems when you start looking at how you implement those. So to go along with the expanded land use matrix, we have the parking code update. So it's an expanded parking table that provides for clarity there. And then there are some changes to our sign code. We are not doing a comprehensive sign ordinance update. We do plan on bringing that back sometime in 2026. However, there are a few things that we wanted to be able to address currently based on some of the feedback that we've received. That being one, the reuse of pole signs in the commercial zones where it's an existing pole sign and cabinet that's already there. With the adoption of the 2021 code, pole signs became a non-conforming and non-permitted use for signage in the commercial zones. And then looking at the subdivision ordinance, we'll be looking also at commercial real estate signage and then signage associated with temporary uses. So if you followed any of the council meetings and some of the workshops that we had in the spring and into July, it really was looking at some of the direction we received was to come back and design a permitting process for the nonprofit or the other types of events that occur not on a regular basis, but that gives them the opportunity to advertise within the city without violating the city's current zoning ordinance when it comes to temporary signage. One of the other bigger changes, definitions. The current code had essentially 2 sets of definitions, some of them having the same term with different meanings for different purposes. So we've actually gone through and we've cleaned that up to where we have one comprehensive set of definitions, and then we address synonymous terms in that particular format. Getting into the subdivision ordinance, we'll go over that in generality. It is a repeal and replace approach to that particular ordinance. This is being mostly driven by the fact that state legislature made changes in March of this year. Takes away the Planning and Zoning Commission's authority as well as the City Council's authority for any type of public review for subdivisions. And so with that, we do have to implement a revised subdivision ordinance that brings that to an administrative review. And so that is what is comprehensively outlined in that particular process along with the financial assurances. And then we get into just some additional items that for the aspect of the subdivision ordinance. Currently, our ordinance is fairly silent when it comes to lot splits, lot combines, parcel combinations, and lot line adjustments. So a common terminology used throughout Arizona's minor land divisions, which can encompass all of those. And so we're actually creating a process and defining it within the subdivision ordinance, so it gives developers and homeowners alike a very straightforward path in order to accomplish these changes to their lots, if that's the case. And then we'll round out at the end a couple new policies. One is the expedited plan check review, and then the at-risk grading, which again, both of these are directives from state legislation. So I want to start with some of you that may not be aware. Staff had been working over this last year on rebranding its development process. We rolled this out in August of this year as a test pilot, working with the various developers and the community in general. In our previous process, you would have to go through what we would call essentially a design review, and then you'd get into a actual, my mind is, I've given this thing so many times now, getting into a secondary review process before you get into site plan review and then getting into your actual plan check. And what we found is the developers were submitting the same thing at every single point of the review process with very minimal changes. We were expending exorbitant amount of staff time in doing so and giving them the exact same comments throughout the entire process. So what we've done is brought it back and we changed the process for due diligence. It's an application process that they can get through in 2 weeks. It's really designed for those that are policy driven. So general plan amendments, change of zones, subdivisions, typically will go through that process. That allow the developer to sit down with staff, get some general direction, especially when it comes to policy related items, ensuring that we're consistent with general plan, especially if they're proposing a change of zone or a subdivision that would follow with that. The second step for them would be the development plan review application. And this particular process is a little bit more detailed than it was in the past. This does require that the applicant have a much more robust submittal from day one when they come in with their application. So a conceptual site plan or conceptual subdivision, conceptual grading, utilities. In that particular process, staff now has enough information to guide and give them very detailed comments in regards to their proposal. Allows the developer to go back and instead of what they used to have to do is come back through now a site plan process, which could take them anywhere from 3 to 4 months as they go through numerous review processes with that or reiterations. It now lets it push it back into the developers or the design professionals' laps, and they now get to hold that process. They get to work with their applicant. They have clear direction, all of the code requirements, an updated zoning code that they can refer to. They can go back and actually design their project, and instead of now coming back through multiple iterations of the same thing, they'll be able to submit for site plan and their building plan check along with street improvements, grading, and so forth concurrent. And we will take all those plans at one time and we will move them through the process. With that being said, ultimately we've seen that it saves anywhere from 2 to 3 months. We can probably speak to say that it's probably a little bit more than that, knowing how many times that they would go through the site plan process. Ultimately, it reduces the redundancy in the process, gives the applicants clear, direct path forward. And so we implemented that again as a trial period. We took comments through the process from the development community, and now we're bringing it back to actually codify it in the code. And here is just a development process summary. It basically kind of shows essentially starting with step one, there would be due diligence. And again, this goes back down to the general plan amendments, change of zones, and so forth. Once they get through that process, again, 2 weeks, they can come right back. They can submit for development review committee. And that's where the applicant now comes in and sits down with staff in a roundtable format. They're sitting with our fire department, our engineering department, planning and building, and they're getting comprehensive comments that are specific to their project. They're not just getting a list of, here's our code requirements, go and design it. We're actually giving them more detailed comments because they're giving us more details up front. If they don't need an entitlement, so if they don't need to go through a change of zone or a general plan amendment, a variance, or a conditional use permit, they'll be able to actually move straight forward and go to step 5, as shown on this exhibit, which is getting them into the building plan check process. And so it cuts out a lot of that in-between process. If they have a very clean submittal and it looks really good when they have to go through an entitlement process, such as like a conditional use permit, then they'll start that process. And again, if it's a very clean submittal, we would allow them to also at their own risk start the building plan check process. And then of course, getting to step 6, which is the building permit issuance. So part of the amendments tonight will actually be to incorporate and codify this into code. One of the other things, again, going back to some of the meetings that we held in the spring and then moving into July of this year, we had a special workshop with the City Council regarding temporary signage. Temporary signage, as you may know and have seen, it gets put up on fences and so forth throughout the city. It's proliferation of signage. Some of it gets maintained, some of it doesn't. And so as the planning department and more specifically neighborhood enforcement set out to start doing proactive enforcement in certain areas, it was realized that a lot of these that utilize this form of signage and temporary advertising of their events, ultimately they were putting their banners out illegally because we don't allow them on fences currently. At the end of the day, we were given direction to come back and actually look for a permitting process to allow for such. And so already in the code is temporary use permits, so that was the easiest place to start looking because they are for temporary events. And so by doing so, we're able to incorporate temporary use permits to allow for temporary signage in conjunction with their actual event. So as part of that, we went through, created some standards. So more specifically, we limit to 12 events per location per year. Basically can be on public or private property. When we get down to the signage, what we heard, we started out at about 16 square feet. We heard that they wanted it to have a larger signage, so we are proposing 24 square feet in area. The banners can be posted up to 8 places within the city, however, no more than 2 per intersection. Something to be very, very clear in regards to this is I can only issue a temporary use permit for an event that's within the city. So that's the only way that they can put up temporary advertising is if the event is held within the city boundary. So if it's held at a location outside of the city boundary, a church or another location, something of that nature, the city does not have the authority to issue a permit. Therefore, they would not be able to erect any type of temporary signage. Moving forward, some of our biggest concerns is just making sure that it's affixed so it's not blowing away. As you can see, some of the signage gets torn down on the fences based on the exhibits that are there. Also adhering to the triangular line of sight, there's an exhibit further in this presentation that discusses that. More importantly, when can they put them up? So as part of the temporary use permit process, they can erect their banners 14 days prior to their event. However, they would have to remove the banners within 48 hours upon conclusion of their event. In talking with several of the entities, some of them hold events that start in March and they go all the way through October, November, and some even December. And so there's some additional language that was put in here that for those types of events, they still cannot have any type of advertisement greater than the 12 consecutive months in the calendar year. And then ultimately, we're asking that they put the temporary use permit number on the front of the banner so that from an enforcement standpoint, as my neighborhood officers are out there, they'll be able to see what is actually permitted and what's not permitted. Moving forward with respect to some of the changes, I alluded to the transect zones. Transect zones primarily make up this downtown area. We have T4 neighborhood, which is shown in the top left-hand side of the exhibit. That particular area really is attributed to more of an R2 type designation. Across from that in the light or mentor green, T3 neighborhood, which is really a single family designation, allowing for minimum lot size of 6,000 square feet. And then we get to T5 general, which is the areas that flank Beale Street, as well as some of the other roads within the downtown area, Oak and Spring. And then T5, which is really the Main Street corridor, which fronts along Andy Devine. And again, to really bring about identity, there's no changes in regards to the development standards in this particular section, but we really wanted to be able to give it identity with respect to the downtown district. So we were essentially just renaming those from the T4s, 3s, 5s to DD 1, 2, 3, and 4. Which brings us to the next portion, our land use matrix. Currently, the city's land use matrix is encapsulated in about 3 pages, and then it gets spread throughout every different section of our code, starting with residential all the way through to our planned development zones. And when that happens, it allows for a lot of opportunity for things to get missed. We cross-reference some of the same footnotes or development standards time and time again. And I will tell you from a staff perspective, as well as from a development standard, being able to provide consistent information is critical for any type of developer within the city. So this helps align all of that into one usable matrix. It provides all of the uses, which we've actually expanded to be more economic development friendly. It lets brokers know that we're open for business. Their uses are permitted, expressly discussed within our zoning code. But we also then, in the column immediately next to the use, we call out use-specific standards. So with those use-specific standards, it gives a direct link not only for staff, but as well as for anybody that's looking at it to be able to take a look at those requirements. I'll just quickly flip through these. These were all part of your packets, so if you have any questions regarding those, as part of this presentation tonight, we are taking comments through October 10th, where we'll go back and we will make any final last-minute changes and edits based on the comments we received. We will push out another public draft of this in preparation of bringing it back before the Planning and Zoning Commission and City Council. So I talked about use-specific standards. Some of those, again, deal with all types of uses, whether it be a marijuana use, and again, we already have those in our code, down to automobile-related uses, things of that nature. However, one that's kind of emerging is the micro-schools, daycare centers, preschools. The code was unclear as to how those were handled with respect to they lumped them all into a school per se or a daycare. However, they each have different types of requirements depending on the age range in which the attendees are going there. And then you get into micro schools, which have no regulations under the state of Arizona. And with that being said, you could end up in a residential zone having 2 or 3 of these types of uses immediately adjacent to one another, having anywhere from 5 to 12, plus kids, even those up to driving, because it allows for of all ages for K through 12. So what we did is we went back through, we truly identified and defined what schools were for K through 12, private, micro schools, college, universities, trade school standards. What's not in here is public schools. Local jurisdiction does not have authority over public schools. So, so that's why you'll see that it's regulated to just those particular areas. One of the other areas was metal buildings. My staff constantly was in a battle in regards to how to address metal buildings. We had some that had architectural elements that were being imposed, and it's behind the building, it's behind their main house, you can't see it. Then you have metal buildings that are very forward of the front of the house that had no architectural elements. So we came through and we really cleaned that up. And basically, if you're going to be forward of your rear building line, you need to have some architectural elements that match that of your primary dwelling unit. If you're back behind that rear building line, paint it to match your primary structure. We're not here to be over-regulatory. The previous code goes into having so many percentages of glass or other architectural features. Then my staff, as well as the applicants and typically the homeowners, are sitting there trying to figure out what constitutes an architectural feature at this point. It became very ambiguous. We ended up with structures that probably had 30% or had 10% at the end of the day. And so this came back and it made it for a level playing field for anybody that's looking to utilize a metal building on their residential property. But also we went through and we looked at those that would be allowed for commercial and industrial. Industrial metal buildings, the biggest changes, some of our industrial areas have metal buildings already. And for us to sit there and say that, we want your next metal building to be this architectural grand feature on your property when it doesn't match your existing. We felt that that was overreaching. And so we did provide for standards that allows them to match their existing. Some of the other standards that we went through, and we've kind of gone through the accessory structures on a couple iterations as we've gone through a couple code amendments since I've been here. And really this is now just taking accessory structures and pulling it into one area. It further defines it, but it also provides greater latitude for patio covers, especially patio covers that are open on 3 sides. We're not looking to count those towards lot coverage requirements, and it provides a greater flexibility for the homeowner. And then I think when we get down to one of the other problems that we've run into, and we deal with this on a regular basis, is getting into the driveway standards. Engineering department does have driveway standards when it goes to connect to our public roadways. However, the area for, let's just say RVs, or let's say the areas that they're not connecting to an improved right-of-way, it was very left unopened. It was left to where they could have basically a dustless surface. And in some cases, they didn't have to put any driveway requirements in at all if the road wasn't already improved. And what we saw with there was if we allowed or we continue to go down that road, at some point in time, the city will and potentially come through and improve those roads, and we're going to have homeowners with no driveways, no driveway approaches. The way the current code was written is that now the city would go out and force them to put that back in. So all we're doing is pushing it down the road when we could be asking them to put it in now, and then when there's a transition period that's in there, whether it be because of where the right-of-way line is or the property line is, there's an alternative material that they can use. This, again, levels the playing field, allows everybody to be treated the same way. Again, I've seen anything from paver strips to gravel in some areas to GG to DG with basically a stabilizer that's on it, and that's deemed dustless for the time being, but after 1 or 2 rains, it's no longer dustless. So then it becomes an enforcement issue for us. One of the other bigger changes is going back and looking at our parking requirements. As we expanded the land use matrix, we went back and looked at the parking requirements, and we aligned the parking requirements to be consistent with that of all of the uses that we incorporated into the expanded land use matrix. So that was done as well. I will flip through this. There's a lot of information. This entire table was a repeal and replace in the code, so it looks like it's all brand new. A lot of it was already existing. So coming back to temporary signs, with respect to those types of temporary uses and events, we did need to make some changes to our sign code. So in this particular table, you'll notice a couple things. One is we allowed for the off-premise temporary use permit signs in the commercial zones. They can have a banner that doesn't exceed 24 square feet. They get the 8 per event, no more than 2 per intersection, and that's consistent with what we've written into the TUP section. One of the other things that we came across was the feather banners, which is located in the bottom right-hand side of this exhibit. What we were noticing is we were seeing feather banners 2, 3, 4 sandwiched right adjacent to one another, not being maintained. It creates line of sight issues, both for pedestrian as well as for vehicular purposes. So we went through and we actually added some standards that were in there. That does require that they have 25 feet spacing, and then it does allow for them to not exceed 40 square feet in their combined area for the feather banners. One of the other items that has come up more recently even just a couple council meetings ago, we did bring forward a presentation addressing some of the pole signs. We have existing pole signs in our commercial zones. They have existing cabinets associated with them. However, in 2021, when the new code went into effect, pole signs were prohibited in our commercial zones, so it rendered these signs non-conforming. With them being non-conforming, if they were not reused or repurposed with the new tenant within 6 months, they could no longer use that. So you end up with these abandoned structures that are out there. You have new tenants that are coming in. You have economic development and growth coming forward. And so you certainly have users that would like to reuse and repurpose these signs. In the interim, staff is recommending that we go ahead and allow for the reuse of the existing signs As long as it's an existing sign, existing cabinet, they can put it back into play. It's no longer blighted if they put a new cabinet face in it. And then when we get into the 2026 comprehensive update, we will probably come back and look at pole signs in totality, and probably actually create different design standards that will allow for better design or better designed pylon or pole signs. So I talked about the triangular line of sight, so the exhibit down on the bottom right-hand side, this is really where the area that's kind of hashed out. We don't want anything that's exceeding 3 feet in height. Once it exceeds 3 feet in height, it becomes a visibility issue for anybody that's in a car, or if you have pedestrians and so forth. So when we talk about banners, we talk about signage, we talk about things that are temporary in nature, this is the area that is prohibited from being in. And this is citywide, so we have this for any type of walls, any type of landscaping, any type of signage. With that being said, an area that was silent in our code was real estate, commercial real estate signage. There was no allocations or discussion as to how do you legally advertise that you have a suite within the Walmart Center that's available for sale or for lease. And so most cities have these already built into their code. They're exempt from any permit. We did the exact same thing. So we did create standards that are consistent with that, allowing up to 48 square feet, maximum width of 8 feet, maximum height of 14 feet. Overall, we went through and we continued to look at some of the issues in regards to the real estate residential signs. And again, some areas it was silent, some areas were left untouched in previous codes. And so we came through, we actually incorporated sign standards that allowed and aligned with that for the real estate industry that serves our residential areas. In this particular area, the most important thing is the open house signs, basically restricting them to 7 in the morning to 7 at night. They can advertise, they can put them out there 7 days a week. However, we do want them to pick them up and not leave them out there on a permanent basis. So I think that's really the biggest takeaway. The size of the signs and so forth, it was all per industry standard. It was missing in our code, so we've added that back in. So we did get a request from one of the local developers in regards to advertising for subdivisions, subdivisions specifically to allow for off-premise signs. This was something that came up essentially out of the valley. A couple of years ago, I actually worked closely with the Building Industry Association as well as every agency within the valley, and we took the best of the best from all of their ordinances when it came to off-site signage and presented a comprehensive sign ordinance to the Building Industry Association. They were very happy with that. It served their needs, especially when you end up having subdivisions that are further off the freeway, harder to get to, doesn't have direct visibility. It allows for those developers to actually put their signs up on properties in a manner that they can help direct potential buyers to their properties. So what is currently proposed in this particular side is they would be allowed to have three on-site signs, and then they could have one off-site sign. The off-site sign had to be on a 1 acre parcel or greater. Comments and feedback that we've already heard. We're already making changes to incorporate some of those changes. Specifically in this particular case, we're going to allow it to go on half-acre lots. However, we're looking for 2,500-foot separation from signs, and they can have two. And again, that just goes back to helping our local developers get their product out there and get it known. One of the other things it was originally proposed to have is to be within a landscape area around the base of the sign. We're going to remove that just as long as it's got no trash, weeds, and debris. One of the bigger things is it limits it to, it has to be a subdivision that's 50 lots or greater. So that way we don't have so many of these coming up in the city, and it becomes a different proliferation of signage. So that's going to wrap it up for the zoning ordinance high level. What you have before you and in your documents, again, is a lot of red line text. A lot of that text is existing throughout the code. It was brought over, it was reformatted and put into the areas. So my staff, developers, homeowners, community members alike, can go directly into the code, go to one area of the code, and see all of the development standards that would be associated with that type of development. Currently, I could tell you, the current code, if you wanted something to deal with parking, you looked in 3 different sections, because you would have landscaping parking, you'd have lighting for parking, and you'd have parking. Well, now we put it all in one area, so. Moving forward, the subdivision ordinance is probably the next biggest change. Again, a lot of this is driven solely off the fact that state statute is going to require that these be administratively approved within the local jurisdictions. That has to be in place by January 1st of this year. Ultimately, when it's all said and done, it allows for, it eliminates the council review of the standard subdivisions, but we will be establishing processes for the lot splits, lot combinations, and lot line adjustments, utilizing the parcel plat process, which is identified and recognized under state statute for subdivisions. A couple other things that will be incorporated into it as part of that. Under the state legislation changes, we do have to implement an at-risk grading process. Currently, we do it. It's just not a defined process, so that will be included in this particular ordinance. In addition to that, there's some changes that we saw on a consistent basis. We were seeing waivers coming forward based on whether it be block lengths or cul-de-sacs, things of that nature, or single-tiered lots where they back up to a street. Those waivers have been taken out in their entirety. Standards still exist, but the applicant has to basically demonstrate that they meet those standards. Since it's going to be administratively approved, staff does not want to be put in the position where we're having to administratively also approve waivers. So that's going to be one of the bigger changes within that subdivision ordinance. Easements, a couple of things that keeps coming up in regards to easements. A couple of things that come up in regards to easements is any type of permanent construction, specifically walls over easements. Ultimately, is what we're saying is we're not going to tell you to change your practice that you've been doing. We know it's going to have a significant effect on the developers if that's the case. However, we do want to make sure that they're holding the city as well as any of the utility purveyors and they're indemnifying us. Ultimately, what happens is if you have a wall constructed over an easement, Unisource has to come through or the city has to come through for some reason or another. They have to take out that wall to access the easement or access something in that nature. It's not always going to be the city or potentially that private utility putting that wall back up. It actually falls back onto the owner's responsibility. So we want to make sure that the owner is fully notified. We've been doing this as a practice from a policy standpoint for several months, making sure that they do have a disclosure notice either at the time that they enter into their purchase agreement or through escrow. And so that'll codify it into this code as well. And then one of the other things, and this is still something that is ongoing, it is here currently, which is the traffic impact analysis. As it stands today, really it's about 200 lots or 200 trips that triggers it today. That can vary depending on the type of density and the type of project that you have. We're proposing currently that if you have a subdivision that's going to exceed 100 lots, you would have to come back and actually prepare a traffic impact analysis, which analyzes all of the intersections, all the trip generations, and so forth, based on a scoping session that is established by the city engineer. Again, this is still subject to change. City engineer and I have been going back and forth. We may tie it back to trips as opposed to number of lots again because density itself may trigger that change. And then kind of starting to round this out, a couple things, again, that was asked in that legislation is that cities had to come up with an expedited plan review. And when the legislation was adopted, it said cities can adopt their own subjective standards as to who or what type of project could go through that expedited review. I can tell you my staff nor engineering wanted to be in that position where we're saying, you good developer meet the requirements, you developer don't meet the requirements. So we came back working with my counterpart Sean, looking at the type of permits that we felt comfortable with that could qualify for an expedited review, single family and duplex lots, duplex type residential uses, providing no variances, no zoning entitlements or discretionary approvals would have been required, and the project has been designed to demonstrate compliance with all applicable zoning subdivision development standards. Those would be projects that could go through an expedited review. 10-day plan review for a single-family lot, that would be cut in half to 5 days if that's the case. So that just gives you an idea as to how that would work. We will continuously monitor and see what types of uses we feel can further go into that category. But this is what we wanted to start with. This is where we felt comfortable with. Two other elements to that, again, going back to the new development process, we looked at what projects could be exempt from that process altogether, and then what could actually get a waiver, and I'll explain the waiver process as well. So those that could be exempt, new single-family residence or duplex, they don't have to go through the development plan review process. Again, as long as they meet all the zoning requirements, they have it designed to meet all the standards, they get all their structural requirements, they can go straight into building permit. And again, in theory, if they meet all those requirements, they should be able to have a permit within 5 days, assuming there's no second round of review. Parcel plats, so again, going back to looking at those minor land divisions, so lot combinations, lot splits. Again, this will goes back to the subdivision ordinance. It's already in effect with Arizona state statute. So as long as they are 4 lots or less, they would be able to fall under that category. And then there may be other lots or other types of projects, or other exemptions as determined by the director. So as we see different one-off type projects, they may be applicable. We certainly want to give them that opportunity. We really are here to usher the developers through the process. We want to get them through it. We want to get them building on their property. We don't want to be a roadblock at the end of the day. Kind of rounding out the projects that we looked at for waivers. So the development process, as it is a mandatory meeting, so the applicant does have to come in and meet with us. It can be via Zoom. We do prefer that it be in person because we feel that we get better round of comments, better engagement and understanding as to their project, what they need out of it, and what the city is looking for as well. But that being said, we've identified certain types of projects that would be allowed to go through a waiver process. And again, this helps for a lot of our tenant improvements where we're really trying to get reuse into some of our existing tenant spaces. So as long as it's 2,500 square feet or under, there's no structural interior walls or partitions, interior mechanical, electrical, plumbing, or alterations, and the exterior mechanical is any type of like-for-like replacement, they would qualify for a waiver. They would still submit their application for development plan review. However, in lieu of coming in, staff will review it. Staff will give them a comprehensive list of requirements as well as their applications that move them into the next process, in the next part of the process. Some of the other things that we looked at, basically, no change to the building footprint, building heights, or any type of utility service, no change in occupancy classification. This is one of the big ones, and this goes back to, again, some of those daycares, the micro schools, things of that nature, where we just end up having children in buildings that aren't meeting the basic safety requirements in regards to exiting or any type of fire suppression or alarms. Moving forward from there, no modifications to the site, so from a traffic circulation standpoint, access or drive aisles or parking requirements, and no increase in impervious surface, which would trigger additional engineering review. Any landscaping that was being removed, as long as it's like for like. We've done several projects as pilot projects. I will speak specifically to 2 that I know are publicly out there. One is the In-N-Out, so you'll notice all of their landscaping has been completely revamped. It's all drought tolerant. It's all low water use. That was a pilot program for us. The other one being, and we are still working through that process, and that is Bosa Donuts. They are still coming. Yes, their sign came down. They had to make some changes to that, but I saw some comments out there. But they qualified for that exemption under the 2,500 square foot. And so they did elect to come in for that process. However, that particular applicant and we have a long-standing working relationship with. He wanted to come through the process, and we explained to him, we want to utilize you as a pilot program, and he was excited to go through it. So. Now coming back to a change from last night's presentation to tonight's is our at-risk grading process. So some of the comments that were received last night, we're able to go back. This is one that we're able to quickly go back in and take a look at, as well as provide some additional clarification in regards to what is needed as part of it. So at-risk grading, we currently do allow. Again, it's by policy only. We have no written aspect to it. However, as part of what's required under the legislative legislative changes is that we do memorialize something. And so being included into our subdivision ordinance would be an at-risk process. It would allow them, as soon as they are done with their preliminary plat, and while they're preparing their final plat, they could actually come in and ask for an at-risk grading permit. In addition to that, and what we've heard from the development community is they also want to be able to perhaps build their perimeter walls and some of their retaining walls as they're doing some of that grading all at risk. And so this actually outlines the process for that, and more specifically, it actually talks about the fact that they still have to give us financial assurances, which is normally what we would get at the final plat stage as we're moving through the process, to make sure that the city has some assurance that in the event that the developer walks away, something catastrophic happens like it did in 2005 to 2008, where developers walked away and left stick frame buildings standing there or partially graded lots. It gives the city a financial assurance and ability to go in and either mitigate it, correct it, finish out some of that work to make sure that we don't end up with drainage or other issues that would impact residents nearby. So I'm going to quickly kind of just talk about what we've heard. We've heard a lot. So you've got about 3 pages of comments before you. The red line version is our response to the comments. I can tell you of the comments that we've heard, some have already been incorporated. Temporary use permits allowing for 8 events as opposed to 6, 24 square feet in area as opposed to 16. The at-risk grading that you see tonight here. Other of those, we are going through the process. We are evaluating, and we do anticipate that there will be some additional changes. Those that, from a staff perspective, maybe we're just not comfortable with, or if it's policy related, those will be placed before the Planning and Zoning Commission, City Council ultimately. So those will be items that we ask for direction back on. So. Being that said, again, you have it before you. I won't go through every single one of them, but it'll give you an idea of, again, what some of the comments are that we're hearing. Goes down to, again, can I have my event in the county? We're clarifying that if you're in the county, you're not eligible for a city permit, so you wouldn't be able to advertise. Some of the major comments that came about was shifting the burden of cost of development earlier on in the process. And certainly that is the case in the manner of the fact that we're asking for conceptual plans through the development plan review process. Typical industry standard, these would be being prepared anyways. You would have a conceptual site plan, you would have a conceptual grading plan, you would have conceptual utilities and streets. All of that would be already on a plan when they're coming in and sitting down to really start getting comments and feedback from staff. So although it seems like we're shifting it, we are just actually shifting the burden back to the developers to provide us a better quality plan up front, as opposed to waiting into that site plan review process that was taking 4 months, or then kicking it further down the road and getting into the plan review, plan check process, and then that being 4 or 5 reviews. So by asking for that information up front, we're getting greater detail. We're being able, from a staff perspective, to give more detailed site-specific, site development comments back to the applicants, which in turn allows them to bring back a project. I will tell you from the design professional standpoint, I did hear a comment that, well, we only design to about 6 to 8%, and we let staff actually design the rest of it for us based on comments. Staff is here to review the project against the standards, and so by cleaning up our code, allowing it to be easily readable and so forth, we're providing those tools to the development community to help them get through that process a little bit easier. Again, I'm not going to go through every single one of these. Most of these have been addressed in some manner or another. So again, as you take your time to review through that, staff is going to take comments on all of this through October 10th. We will, again, go back, we'll make some final revisions, we'll push out final draft copies to the stakeholders, to the commissions, to the council. It'll be posted back on the city's website, which is where it is currently posted as well. That way, again, we can solicit those comments. Just a little bit about the timeline. We kind of started this essentially back in January. We started doing a series of workshops, well, actually in October of 2024, but throughout the year, we were continuously taking comments from the development community, stakeholders, and so forth, and that's how we got to where we were with this comprehensive update. The development process rebranding launched August 1st. And again, we've had good feedback on that particular process. And what we're targeting is to be able to bring this back to the Planning and Zoning Commission in November. It will follow essentially 1 week later to the City Council in November, so that way it's ready for implementation as of January 1st, which is a requirement for state statute. With that, 49 minutes, and I will turn it back over to the commission if you have any questions. It is a workshop in a sense type setting, so I know the public will have comments that they would probably like to make in regards to this. My staff and myself will readily take notes of those, and then we'll come back and answer any questions you have.
Great, thank you so much, Jason.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to save our questions for staff until we move into our next phase. But right now, I'm just going to open the floor for public comment. So if anybody has anything that they wish to address us with, they can approach the podium and state your name.
I do have one.
Okay, we have a Robin Gordon. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Robin Gordon. I'm here this evening representing a group I'm involved with called Sounds of Kingman. Sounds of Kingman has been putting on concerts in Metcalf Park for now 15 years during the summer months. And then several years ago, we added to our schedule for the winter months some speakers that would speak primarily in an indoor location like the library and speak on historic subjects and offer those to the public. All of our concerts and also the speakers are free to the public. We're very fortunate that the business community has been very supportive of us in sponsoring these events so that we can pay the performers and also pay the people who do the presentation, yet offer the events free to the public. We are a nonprofit. I'm here tonight to talk a little bit about the temporary use permit, the special events application. This application does not work for us. The reason it doesn't work for us is because we have events scheduled throughout the entire year, the summer months and the winter months, and at the beginning of the year don't often know or don't know what the dates are going to be for the events later in the year. So we would end up having to file several of these applications and pay each time for that application. And I think that that's not really fair. I think that either we should be able to be charged once a year for the application, and then any subsequent applications that we would make during the rest of the year would be at no charge or something like that, I think would be more fair. Part of the reason why we can't predict when these events are going to be is we use the county library's facilities, and they only allow us to schedule events 3 months in advance. So there's absolutely, it's impossible to schedule for a whole year, especially with the library. Now the city parks, which is Metcalf Park, which is where we hold our concerts, that's not a problem. But right now the problem would be with the library. It's just impossible for us to do that. I'm also confused by some of these things that are exempt from having to file for this special event application, like seasonal sales. Why are seasonal sales exempt from having to file an application, and they're allowed to put up signs? Basically, it would be at no charge. And then last night I talked a little bit about the yard sale issue. I understand that that's a staffing issue, that the developmental services doesn't have the staff to be able to monitor that. But I think that yard sale signs is probably one of the big problems we have in this community as far as clutter and making the community look trashy. And I think that's kind of what started this whole thing. So I think it needs to be addressed as well. Thank you for allowing me to talk to you. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Great, thank you so much. We're actually not allowed to respond
okay.
In this setting, but thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right, does anybody else have a comment? No? Okay, I see none. Jason, are you going to address that one?
So just real quick in regards to temporary signs, let me just address the fact that Sounds of Kingman, yes, they do have multiple events. They would be, if they don't know when each of those events would be, they don't know the banners and things of that nature, where they're going to be, they would be subject to having to pull a separate permit for each event. If they come in at January 1st, they know all of their events, they have them all lined up, they know where their banners are going to be, they have all that authorization from those property owners, they are able to pull one permit, and it's good for the entire year for all of their events. With respect to seasonal sales has been exempt in the code under the TUP section because it's identified specifically for 45 days. That's all they get. The seasonal sales typically don't have off-site signs or temporary banners that they use. It's typically in front of either a Christmas tree lot or a pumpkin farm, something of that nature. And again, the TUP section is only being modified in this particular instance is to allow for these types of events to actually have off-site banners. Otherwise, essentially, they wouldn't be going through this because most of these events are being held either at the county, on county fairground property, or on city property, which would exempt them from going through the TUP process. But again, the only reason why they would have to go through it is because they're doing off-site banners. Same thing with respect to yard sales. If I were to have somebody coming in, I would have to have a full-time person just issuing yard sale permits at our public counter. To have somebody doing that 7 days a week when I will just tell you, we go out there, we do pull down the yard sale signs, we go out there, we try to monitor it from that perspective, but to issue a permit and take away from getting development review applications out the door, working with our development community, my staff, my resources are better spent in that location.
Thank you, Jason. All right, does anybody have, you know what, let me just open us up for commission discussion, and then you can stay there and we can talk to Jason. Go ahead.
Have much to say. And besides, Madam Chair, Mr. Moquin?
Oakland.
Okay. I'd just like to say you did a really good job with the land use matrix and also with the parking, you and your staff. Just like,
Thank you.
I do have one question. You were talking about at the end about how it front loads the development a little bit on what their responsibility is when coming to you. How much time savings, though, are they probably going to get on all of the review process being cut down?
I will tell you it would be significant.
Okay.
From what I've seen, what I've engaged in this last year, if you were to come into our office with a 6 to 8% drawing, in most cases, that design professional is now having to go back to his client multiple times over, multiple iterations of their contract or change orders associated with it, additional services. And I will tell you, every time that happens, the city is to blame. It's just how it is in the development community. We are always to blame. We're to blame for holding up the process. We're the ones that are blamed for, giving them requirements that they didn't get the first time. And a lot of that comes down to the fact that we don't get enough information through that first level of review. So we've gone through and we've created a standard in which they should be adhering to. They were very much industry standard. It is nothing out of the norm. If you look at what's required on the development plan review application, it's going to be 59 items. Of those 59 items, we're talking simple things. A north arrow, vicinity map, application information or applicant information, property owner, zoning, show us existing proposed utilities, show us what your plan is for your drainage on site. When we say conceptual grading, we're looking at for some topo lines, we're looking at for some flows. Where is the drainage going? So it is very conceptual at that stage, but it's enough to now give staff, both planning, zoning, building, engineering, and the fire department enough information to give very clear, decisive comments for them to go back, make revisions to their plans, and now they can spend that time, instead of coming back and forth through our process, they can be working with their applicant, fully designing their site, moving it forward into their elevations, architectural design and details and so forth. And what it does for us is it allows my staff, the engineering staff, the fire department staff, building staff, to be available to take those phone calls and be able to respond to them, whether it be phone call, whether it be email. I will tell you, my staff, I require that they respond to calls within 24 hours, if not same day if possible. But typically, if we get something at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, we may not be able to get to it to the next day. But from my perspective, that's providing the service that they need, that guidance, those types of things. So as long as that two-way street communication is there, and I can tell you that's what I've committed to since I've came here, that's the direction we'll continue to go.
Thank you. Well, and it sounds like that time saving should offset any kind of extra cost anyway. But thank you.
I have a question. Going back to Sounds of Kingman, Sounds of Kingman. So are we talking about the signs that they put at Metcalf Park? Doesn't the city own Metcalf Park?
So typically, any type of sign or banner that they put that is off-site. So when we say off-site signs, currently in the city ordinance, the only person that can advertise and put a banner up is going to be the business that's located, the brick and mortar business that's located on that particular property. So these types of temporary events, they don't have a legal mechanism of actually advertising today. They've been doing it all along. We recognize it. We've been out there. We've done some enforcement on it. And now what started this was back in March. We recognized that there was quite the proliferation of illegal banners throughout the city. And it wasn't just on fences. It was the McDonald's that has theirs up, 365 days a year. Dan Bar has theirs up for different events on a regular basis and so forth. And so we wanted to be able to get an educational campaign out there. We got that information out there. And what ensued after that was we'd be taking away their ability to advertise their events. What the city was left with is narrowly trying to thread a process that would not put us on the map. And I say that in the respect to when you look at Reed versus Gilbert. Reed versus Gilbert was a case that came out where the city of Gilbert essentially denied respective individuals from advertising within the city. And essentially, the courts came back down and said, you can't look at content, you can't look at who it is, or any of that nature. You have to look at where it is, you can look at when it's placed, and so forth. That's what cities can regulate. So we had to go back and look at, one, do we want to allow everybody in the city? Or did we want to allow for providing a process for events that were already identified in the code? And that's where we came up with the temporary use permit. I will say, it is narrowly skirting Reed versus Gilbert probably at the end of the day. Does that mean we won't get challenged? Probably not. We probably will at some point in time. But we will certainly cross that bridge when we get there.
Because we're talking about a nonprofit. We're talking about free to the community. We're talking about a community service, essentially. So could there, or would there be the opportunity for an exception if it was a plus to the community instead of something where somebody was selling something for profit, per se?
So I think
No.
that's
where
where
it is and what it is, huh?
Commissioner Commissioners, I think that's where you get back to, and Carl can probably chime in here. That would get us in trouble very quickly because now we are picking one versus another.
Gotta pick sides.
Jason's correct. That's why we have to be very careful about, as he says, we're kind of threading the needle on our sign regulation to be as accepting and allowing some of these certain type of things, so we don't cross that threshold of Reed versus Gilbert. I think we're pushing it, but we're trying to make some of these allowances for those groups now. That's what this is.
Okay. So is it a state mandated that political signs have to be allowed in a city?
There's a state statute that requires political signage in city right-of-way during this captured time period.
Okay.
I just have one more question. So I've noticed that there are a lot of the digital signs that are now around Kingman. And frequently it says, if you're a nonprofit, you should contact to advertise. Does that program, does that work for free? Is that part of how does that program?
Chair Goss, Commissioners, that program is actually managed by our city clerk's office. There is a cost to advertise. I don't want to misspeak, but I know that there's a daily and a weekly rate for that type of advertisement. It is limited to nonprofits only.
Okay.
So keeping in mind, maybe that would be Sounds of Kingman, they could advertise through that means. However, what we have also come across is we have the craft fairs, we have the farmers markets, things of that nature, things that are on the county fairgrounds. Those are not nonprofit, so they would not be able to advertise on those types of devices.
Yeah, because I haven't really seen anybody using it, so maybe.
Yeah, well, I don't monitor that program. It is done through our city clerk's office.
Okay, thank you.
I have one question, if I might. Back to the Sounds of Kingman. Because they don't know when or where their event will be located, is there a way that we could make a blanket license, one fee only, that would cover the entire year? And then on a monthly basis or quarterly basis, they could come in and say, here's where our events are going to be, instead of having to pay each time that they have that event.
So Chair Goss, Commissioner McCoy, I think again, we go back to, are we treating one entity equal to that of another? So the temporary use permit process is a process that's utilized for other types of events as well. So it's going to come down to a policy decision. Do we want to go down that road to allow for an open-ended permit to where they're having to come in on a regular basis? And what I fear is they forget to come in, we go out there, they don't have a current permit tag on their banner, we take their banner down, and then, then it's my staff that's the ones that are having to answer to it. And I tell you, it happens. It happens when there's rain events, because all of a sudden they cancel the event, but then they want to utilize that same period for another time. So then it becomes a tracking issue for our staff in doing so. Again, not something that's probably impossible, but again, it's going to come down to, is there desire to go with that type of a process? So,
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair, if I might address Mr. Moquin. I do have a concern, like you're just talking about the subjectivity about assigning, certain people as being a true nonprofit versus a not. I mean, how does that really differ from the design professionals that are listed in some of these documents too? It's kind of subjective. I know that we're mandated by the state to administratively approve these plats. We've had a lot of comment and question about them in the past. I mean, right now it's all transparent. The public can see what we're doing. Like, it's been 3 months since we've met. It makes me as a commissioner wonder what the heck's happened at the city with all these things we used to get before us. I saw in the notes there was like a provision that you have to log these sort of decisions that were made, the administrator or director. Like, maybe that could be channeled through us so we get an update on what's happening at the city without any sort of purview on our part, just so that we know that there's still something happening and that we're still involved in the process. But again, I don't understand completely how you're going to avoid that subjectivity, especially when you're taking something which conservatives should be kind of wary of. You have something that's open right now, and you're converting it into a little dungeon in the government somewhere that's approving these things that could have a pretty huge community impact. I mean, we had conversations, if Chair Schwab was here, about the proximity of parks, whether there's sidewalks leading to them, the depth of the drainage, the retention basins in these places. These were important conversations that now are just, they're wiped off the face of the earth, because these plats are basically the starting point for these projects, and they're being taken out of our hands completely. So again, I know you guys have heard me complain about this for the last, umpteen different meetings, pretty, vociferously. But if you could provide some sort of a channel to where we understand what we're losing based on these recent decisions, which are completely out of our hands, that would that would help us appreciate what you guys are doing on your end. That's my feedback.
Chair Goss, Commissioner Waters, I can tell you, coming from this side of the industry, having a very public forward process and doing it for 27 plus years, I echo some of the concerns in regards to the transparency. The state legislature certainly rules and governs over the local municipalities. So as the bills get passed, and we've had those conversations in the past, there are bills that from a legislative standpoint that we do stand up against. We write letters and things of that nature. We have a legislative consultant that is currently and is always acting on the city's best interests at the direction of our policymakers, our council that's elected, and so forth. So that is an ongoing thing, and that happens throughout the year during every legislative session. When it comes back to things of this nature, again, it goes back to the state legislature, again, comes back to it was a compromise. So the state legislature wanted to force by right zoning onto jurisdictions, basically essentially giving developers carte blanche for anything that's already zoned for residential based on density. They wouldn't have to go through any type of public hearing process, and we would have zero control over our local zoning if that's the case. With what they ultimately ended up with was, again, the platting process, which was, for the most part, as long as you met the standards anyways, from a zoning or a planning and zoning commission standpoint, from a city council standpoint, it essentially allowed them to, as long as they met those standards, we didn't really have a leg to stand on to deny it. That said, going back to what does come before you, which would be general plan amendments and change of zones, those particular projects, as we're seeing it from a staff perspective, and again, we're asking for more things up front, and this was brought up yesterday. Yes, we are asking for some conceptual designs that go with your proposed change of zone. We're not holding you to that design, but if you're going to come forward and ask for a change of zone or a general plan amendment, you're going before the public, they should have an idea of what type of product, what type of lotting and things of nature may come with that. And of course, under the general plan, we would talk about what the maximum density are, what the maximum density would be allowed. And so those are the things that we can disclose through the public hearing process. I can tell you with some of our staffing changes, we ended up taking one of our positions and creating a plan or a permit project coordinator position. One of the roles of that particular position is to actually push out on a regular basis a log of projects that are coming in. So not just subdivisions, but it could be change of zones, it could be general plan amendments, it could be variances, CUPs, and that is actually being sent out to allow for, let the city management council know as to where those particular projects are falling. It allows us to keep tabs on projects that are forthcoming, some of those that may even have of a more of a interest or stake in the city in general. But yes, that is all part of the process. As we are coming through, we're also implementing SmartGov, in this fall period that's forthcoming. It comes with additional reporting opportunities as well. We've been talking with our GIS department about building kind of a site where the commission, council will be able to hover over an icon and they'll be able to see exactly what's being proposed, what action has been taken on that particular action, application and so forth. So those are some of the things that are, again, in the works. It's going to take some time to get there, but for the most part, you will be seeing some reporting features coming out so that way you do see what's coming forward.
Appreciate it. I do have a couple other questions, but I don't want to hog all the time, you guys.
No, go ahead.
The other one was for this flyer here. I think I have the right one. Just give me one moment. Oh yeah, there's a mention of standardized building plans, and I think you mentioned that you and some other staff got together and tried to approve some. My big concern is cookie cutter subdivisions, like you see when you go into Henderson. You've heard me say it to you directly, and other people have heard that. Like, how would that not produce that? If you're greasing the wheels for the developers to pick a handy set of plans, unless I'm misunderstanding what this thing is, I mean, the danger I see is potentially not just acres, like square miles of identical houses that were easy to get pushed through. I just see that potentially being a problem, and I'm not sure if there's contingencies or you have a huge number of these houses or even what this whole process is.
Chair Goss, Commissioner Waters. So when we talk about standardized plans, these are plans that have already been reviewed through our architectural process. So so such as, again, angle homes, things of that nature, where they are utilizing a product on a regular basis throughout their subdivision. This allows them to come in and get that permit in a very quick manner. Ultimately, as we continue through this process, what I foresee is that being an over-the-counter permit, so they can get their site plans approved for those single-family homes on a daily basis, as opposed to a 10-day review period. That said, we talked about some legislative changes. There was additional legislative changes that went into effect this year that the city will have to address in 2026, and that does include the fact, exactly what you're talking about. The city is going to be required to have a standard plan, architectural site plan for single family, for duplex, and for ADUs. It is implemented over a period of time, over this next year. We have been in discussions with the League of Cities as to how that looks, because it's either the city is going out, we're going to have to hire a design consultant to actually create these plans, get structural drawings, and now put it on the shelf for any homeowner that wants to come in and use it. And again, that is another legislative requirement that was imposed, and this is one that we did push back on. League of Cities pushed back on, American Planning Association pushed it back on. Again, at the end of the day, legislation moved forward, and they did adopt it, and it was a bill that was signed by Governor Hobbs. That, again, going back, when I talk about the League of Cities, they had offered to actually go out, get the registered architect, do the design plans. We could all pay into that particular fee on a per usage basis. However, I could tell you the product that they're building in Mesa, Tempe, Surprise is not going to be a product that you would likely see in Kingman. So going in and, piggybacking on that type of a use or on that type of a design doesn't work for us. So we are going to probably be working locally between ourselves, the county, likely Bullhead, as well as Lake Havasu, and try to combine resources. Because again, this is something that's being imposed upon local jurisdictions that we have to come up with these plans.
Thank you. Sorry, Madam Chair. So it's coming top down, but is it being driven by affordable housing? Is that
Yes.
That's the catch-all buzzword that's being used?
Chair Goss, Commissioner Waters, yes, 100%. It's based on affordable housing. They want to be able to allow for a homeowner that doesn't have the ability to go out and hire a registered architect or a designer to be able to come in, pick a design off the shelf, and go out and build their own home.
Okay, and the population, the replacement rate of our native population in this country is, at replacement level, basically, for the people that die, so what's driving it? I don't know. Anyway, I do have another question. On the Title I changes, I noticed that the code intends to, it's under 1-20.020, it says, you retain the first three, but then the fourth one is conserve and stabilize the total value of property within the community. And, my background is in appraisal, and it's, I've always kind of used this sort of guidance as to, why I make certain decisions up here. I'm not sure why that was struck out. Sorry, I'll let you get to it. It's Title I, title purpose, and it's on page 3. It's kind of right in the beginning. Keep going. Yeah, you'll see 4 struck out here. Why wouldn't the city want to preserve property values?
So Chair Goss, Commissioner Waters, it's a subjective standard that was placed in this code when it was adopted. I can tell you, as much as that may be a goal, it's not a measurable goal for a planning and zoning document to incorporate. We don't ask for the value of the property when they go through the planning and zoning process. We don't look at what the value of that home may be when they go to build it and so forth. Value gets looked at when they go to pull permits, because the building code requires that be based on the valuation tables. However, to have it in as a zoning or a caveat within the zoning code, it just doesn't provide value and actually gives a false sense that we are out there trying to do something of which we have no control over.
Well, yeah, just from this side of the the dais. I mean, when I was in the county, we ran the sales affidavits and we ran statistics on them. And we found that sure enough, where you have density, you have lower property values, you know, and where you have incorporation of mobile homes in certain neighborhoods, you can see a fall off in property values. It's fascinating to see it, but it's a functionary thing to where you have certain inputs, you have almost a guaranteed output. It seems like we're taking away one of the criteria we could use to prevent something like endless rows of houses that are completely identical, like we were just talking about. I don't see why we'd want to get rid of that language when it is not entirely subjective. You can go to the county website and see property values and make the case that, you know, based on my knowledge of how, you know, neighborhood life cycles or markets work, that property values can go down if we make bad decisions as a city.
Chair House Commissioner Waters, certainly understand where you're coming from that perspective. And I guess if I were to put a different hat on and I come up here as the general public before the Planning and Zoning Commission or the City Council and say, I don't like a project because it's going to devalue my property, there's nothing that, one, as a property owner, do I know that for a fact? There's no data to support that one way or the other. There's theories, there's ideas, but it doesn't give the Planning and Zoning Commission or the council the ability to simply deny a permit or an action based on that same basis. And I will defer to my city attorney.
You are correct.
Thank you. So again, it may serve a functional theory process. However, it gives almost a false sense that this is solely what we're making decisions on, and that's not the case.
We have a property, maybe an acre, and you run power towers over it, you know, running clear to the dam, you know, God only knows where, Phoenix or something. Intuitively, you know that that's going to have some sort of problem with the, you know, the value of the property. You have a tire shop right next door to residential. It's gonna, it seems like a willful disregard for something that we know is true. It's frustrating, you know? We're losing some ability to protect our community by striking out this thing, I think, in particular.
I think, do we have, I think we basically are at a place where staff is saying that their hands are tied legally. And we would like to be able to do it, but they legally can't. So, because they can't do anything about it, they can't put it in the code.
Madam Chair, I agree. This is kind of both a conversation, like we've kind of merged the discussion with Mr. Moquin with our, you know, discussion amongst ourselves here. So, I did have one more, and that was, you just briefly mentioned the metal standards, right, on buildings. Just want to revisit it. Like it seems like you're taking a step back from enforcing some of the standards and how much metal can be on a property. Does this allow shipping containers to be used as like residences in the city, or are you taking a lighter hand on that, or?
So, Chair Goss, Commissioner Waters, with respect to, let's start with just metal buildings in general. It's not that we're taking a step back, as again, we get back into this subjective, are we meeting this 25% threshold? And again, asking the applicant or staff to continuously make these calculations. Shipping containers in themselves, metal buildings, are already permitted within our code. If they're going to be utilized for residential purposes, they do require a conditional use permit, so that would come before the Planning and Zoning Commission and the City Council. It does require that they do architectural treatments to help blend that with the community. So those standards are already existing.
Got it. So at a minimum, they need to paint it, right?
Chair Goss, Commissioner Waters, I think when we're talking, what we see a lot of, and again, it's not the Connex containers. That's not what we're seeing in people's backyards. So I've not, since my year of being here, I've not had an application come before me where they want to put a metal cargo container in their backyard and utilize it for residential purposes. What we're seeing is the sheds or the RV type buildings that are all metal. They typically come pre-designed, manufactured, engineered. They're stainless or some sort of galvanized metal at the end of the day. And we're saying if it's on the back of the property, just paint it to match, because again, we don't want to be over regulatory. If it's going to be forward of the rear building line, then yes, we're looking at some of those architectural treatments.
Well, thank you.
I'd like to expand on that a moment if I could, please. At one time, we had an exterior appearance criteria for houses built after a certain year any accessory structure had to be basically the same type of construction and appearance of the main dwelling. Does this metal building proposal override that, or does that appearance criteria even still exist?
Chair Goss, Commissioner McCoy, with respect to the metal buildings, again, it goes back to if it is forward-facing of the rear building line, it is required under the code, as it is being proposed, that they have architectural treatments that match that particular structure. So if you have a stucco structure, they could come in and do a tex coat type finish on it, which gives it almost that stucco-like exterior finish. When we start looking at garage doors, we want them to be garage doors that are typically found in a residential community if they're forward-facing. So those standards are in this particular design.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have any more questions?
Don't believe so.
No? All right, thank you so much, Jason.
Thank you.
All right, do we have any more discussion amongst ourselves? No?
Madam Chair, I would like to see some of the reporting that Jason mentioned, stream to us, or at least just give us an idea of what's been happening, especially like a year-over-year comparison before we started implementing this change to put more in the hands of the director. I'd like to see what we're losing, basically, that used to come over here in terms of numbers, the statistics. Thank you.
All right, well, if we are finished, then I will adjourn this meeting. Thank you.